they're going to attempt to do here. Oh, my, we've never seen this. We've never seen this. There goes the attitude. Powerbomb. Jutsu.
So, like, we're back again with a special interview. So we got this homie right here, the Canadian Dragon, man. I think we got this first guest from Canada on the show.
Hey, we're international now.
Yeah, we're international, man. We're a national podcast.
All right. So I guess we should start. How do you like to be introduced to the people?
This was my old nickname. I think that's been gone for about a year now, but now it's just North Star Shimbashi. I've been professional wrestler for about 4.5 years, and currently now I'm out of Cleveland, Ohio, but I did spend a lot of time in Texas.
Okay.
All right, cool. My first question was going to be, are you still based in Canada? Because it's like, man, I see you in the Midwest a lot. I was like, hey, that's a long drive.
I was born in Edmonton, and so I'm always going to rep that. That's my hometown. I always want to represent that in some form or another. And but no, I lived in Houston for a while, and then I spent some time overseas in Europe and the Middle East as a kid. So I've moved around a lot, but like Canada's always been my home for sure.
Okay. So, like, tell us about your journey and how, like, you started. Like, what was your origins from wrestling until now?
Everyone who's wrestling was like super passionate about it. Neighbors TV, and the first match I ever watched was Batista versus like Santino Marella in like a quick 30-second squash on Raw. But I was hooked immediately, so I went home the next Monday to turn it on at my place. But it was during that time, I think, when like Randy Orton and Triple H were feuding in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom came in, and I was 8 years old, and she came into the part where Randy Orton DDTs Stephanie and then kisses her while Triple H is handcuffed. So she saw that, and that was her first exposure to like what WWE was. And she was like, "You're never watching this. This is not allowed in our house." So I was like, okay. So I only had the figures that my other neighbor had given me, and I didn't know anything about them. So like, I think my favorite figures, it was Rey Mysterio and Big Daddy V were my two favorite figurines growing up, because I didn't see anything else. And so then we moved to the Middle East, and it was like I was 10 years old, and none of the channels were in English. So the only thing that like made sense to me or that I could watch was SmackDown. So that's when my mom finally let me watch it. And then from there, like I was watching Raw, SmackDown. I couldn't afford the pay-per-views, but I was on YouTube a lot. And then
I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah. Like buying a pay-per-view was like a big deal. It was a really big deal at the time. So yeah, so I buy like the Rumble, and that was probably it. But then in high school, I did amateur wrestling in the thought that I'll eventually transition that into regular wrestling or professional wrestling. And I was always told I was too small. Like that was a big thing. And they were like, you can't do it. Because I think at the time I was like 120 pounds or something. And so everyone around me was like, oh, I can't do it. And I was like, oh, okay, well then I'll get a normal job. And then COVID happened. And I remember I was watching, like all I was doing was watching wrestling. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I looked it up. I was going to Texas A&M at the time. And there's a training school like 5 minutes from where my college was at. So I was like, there's no way I'm not going to try to do this. So I told my parents that it was $2,000 I needed to sign up. And my parents were like, no, you need to go to college and get a real job. Like that was the idea. And I said, well, what if I come up with the money myself? And they said, yeah, if you can find $2,000, like go for it. And so I basically just walked into the mall in my hometown and just asked every store if they were hiring. And I ended up getting 2 jobs at a retail store, or 2 different ones. So I would open at one and then I would close at the other. And I just worked for 4 months until I had like $2,000 and $30, and I just took it all out of my bank account and I gave it to a complete stranger at the time that was running out of like a shitty boxing gym, and I was like, teach me how to be a wrestler. And so that's how I started, and then just kept showing up, kept doing it, and then I believe like 6 months after I started training, I debuted, and then just since then, man, it's been great. I'm so happy I did it. I think that's what I was meant to do. So that's how I started.
Man, that is a crazy story.
That's like the best one. Just like top 10 best wrestling story we heard from.
All right, that's great.
Hey man, one benefit of COVID, I guess.
I guess, yeah, that was the only thing.
Like we see you wrestle a lot of places though. Cause you wrestled like in Booker T promotion for a while. I see you some there. They did like some work for AEW as well, like as like enhancement. And I see you at AIW a lot. That's where I go to a lot. That's where I got introduced from you the first time in the scramble match. And then Darrell seen you at Naptown All Pro.
Yep. So what was the move from Texas back to Ohio, or to Ohio, I guess? Was it wrestling based or just life?
That the independent scene is a lot stronger in the Midwest in terms of exposure. I think I love Texas. I personally think some of the best like wrestlers are in Texas, and I don't think there's enough eyes on that scene, unfortunately. But with the Midwest, everything's a lot closer. So that there's Chicago, there's Indiana, there's Ohio, there's Pennsylvania, there's all those states up in the Northeast. So I think it's stronger. But to be honest, the reason I moved up here is my girlfriend's going for her PhD at Case Western, and so we just ended up making the move up here. It just seemed to be a beneficial thing. So we took all of our stuff, we put it in my truck, and we drove. I think it was 14 hours from Dallas to Ohio back in August.
Nice.
So I always like to ask, just going back to the training, I always like to ask, who's the person who had the biggest impact on you on training?
Oh man, that's so tough. I think on training, I mean, it might be, yeah, that's tough. I've trained at so many different places. It's really tough because I did a little bit so I started training at Lions Pride Sports. That's where the boxing gym was ran out of, and they eventually got their own facility. But I've done some training at Booker T's Reality of Wrestling. I've done training at New Texas Pro. I've done some training at Metroplex or MPX Wrestling under Athena and Matthew Palmer, and then obviously AIW up here with Derek and Dom. But I think maybe not the biggest person to influence me, but I think the biggest thing that I got to influence is to always keep training in some form or another, whether that be working on your cardio or just doing like arm drags with beginner classes. I think it's really beneficial to be in training as much as possible. And like, I'm definitely not there as much as I'd like to be, but I still try to make an effort to go at least like 2-3 times a week.
Okay. It's like, what was like one like the hardest thing to grasp, like when it comes to training?
I mean, I think I think the hardest thing to grasp was just how to improve the craft as a whole when you're after your debut. Because when you're training, a lot of it, to me at least, felt really easy because it was like they tell you to do something and you do it. And that's kind of, I did a few sports in high school and throughout college where that made sense to me. But going out there and feeling a crowd, that was probably the more of the difficult thing. And just how to keep improving your craft from there. I would say that's the most difficult.
Okay.
All right. So I'm losing my voice, man. So you mentioned crowds. Do you have a favorite crowd to perform in front of? Like we've seen you at a few different places, so you get around.
Yeah, I really like the New Texas crowd a lot. I think I was just there last weekend, and I think it's that might have been one of the best crowds I've been in front of, just bar none. It was in Austin, and the people who run New Texas Pro ran that show, Kiefer, JJ Blake, and Biss they just put together a really good show, and those fans are passionate. I think West Coast Pro has a super great crowd, super passionate, love wrestling, but they also put on phenomenal shows, so it might just be that. And then a place that I've noticed in general is Chicago has some pretty great crowds as well, especially for like freelance or DPW. I would say those are probably of the ones I've seen, but also, AIW draws a crazy good house too.
Yep.
think they did 600 2 months ago, which is that might
Yeah,
outside of
that's
like
dope.
AEW or
That's pretty
anything. That
big. Yeah.
yeah, that might be the biggest crowd I've ever wrestled in front of. So I guess would be my four would be West Coast, New Texas, and then AIW, and then Chicago would be the ones that I would say.
So there.
Yep. Sorry. I think I slipped out for a second. So crowd work, enjoy your favorite crowds. Do you prefer to work babyface, heel? Which do you prefer? Because I've only seen you as like babyface. We kind of so.
I kind of don't mind either one. It kind of interchanges. I think people like my colleagues and friends, I think they enjoy me going heel more, but that just be more because they get a kick out of it. But no, I don't really have a preference. I really enjoy both sides of it.
All right, so you've picked up a lot of gold over your career. Like I think it's a lot. Just getting ready for the show. Do you remember your first one, the first championship?
I came up in training with who is no longer wrestling, but his name's Zane Valero, and it was at this promotion APW, which like when you first start wrestling, you're doing the rounds, you're getting as many reps as possible, but I remember at that time, 'cause I think APW they work around like a more what's the word like more out in the country of Texas, I would say, like more in the like the outskirts. Like it's never in Dallas. It'd be like in like Cleburne or Abilene or something like that. But I remember like winning those titles in front of just like a bunch of like Southern folk and like thinking it was the biggest deal at the time. And just to see like what I've done since then has been wild. But yeah, that was the first one. And that one did mean a lot because I got to win it with my best friend, Zane Valero. So that was who I was also like living together with. So it was really cool. It was really cool.
Like a full circle moment.
Yeah.
Okay, we did it.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we know you love wrestling. We know COVID's the thing that got you into wrestling. We've had some people on the show before, and they've talked about how they started training and it was just too much. So what's the thing that kept you going through training?
At the time, and I remember being like, that's secondary in terms of my time and focus. My main focus is going to training, so I can get on a show as quickly as possible. But and maybe that was because I worked 4 months to get $2,000 for it, and I was like, I'm gonna get the most out of this, and that's how I did. But I just, I knew I wanted to be a wrestler since I was like 8, and then I had those 4 months where I was working every day with just the goal of I'm going to use this to pay to go to training. So I didn't have any doubts in training, but I've definitely like since becoming a wrestler, I think everyone struggles with like self-doubt on like if this is worth it and everything. But I always come back to like if 10-year-old me could see what I'm doing, I think they'd want me to keep going. And I know deep down, whenever I have a good match, or even when I watch just like a good match in general, like that is like I'm gonna keep doing this. This is what I love doing.
Right, and you travel like different places too, so like that keeps you going too. Like, hey, you're 1 minute you're in Ohio, Texas, and then the West Coast, and it's like all that in a 4-year span. That you're doing something, just makes you keep on going.
So what's been the like biggest moment for you in like the 4 years?
I think at the time I had a match with one of my really good friends, Danny Orion, who if anyone's not familiar, they should 100% check out. He's fantastic. But we had a match together. It was a one-on-one. It was our first time ever like working together on like a big show. It was at Inspire, and I remember we did it, and it was the first time I ever got like tweeted out, and like there was like a buzz around that match. I think that was the first time that I'd really felt accomplished and felt like I was moving in the right direction. And to do that with someone I was so close with, that was really cool. First time I ever did extra work, that felt like a really big deal. But I don't know if I've had, like, I guess, a moment where I was like, this is it. I'm kind of always moving forward, trying to think of the next thing. And I think my goals are gonna happen so far down the road that I don't necessarily stop and smell the roses as much as I probably should.
All right. So, what are some of those goals? No, I'm just digging.
Signed easily, 100%. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. All right. Keep it simple.
So, like, back to the family. So, like, right now, since you're like all over the place, how your family feel about you wrestling now?
I think to be clear, once my parents saw that I was like, once they saw my first match, they saw how much I loved it, and they were like, okay, well, this is where his life's gonna go. And now they couldn't be more supportive. And I don't even think they weren't supportive at the start. I think they just had reservations about, like, I guess it'd be the same thing as if, like, my kid came down while he was in school and he was like, I'm gonna go to the NFL, like, right now. You know, like, it's like, well, hold on, we have other stuff going on.
There's some steps you have to take to get there. You can't just
Yeah, exactly. And so I just don't know. And they're not super big wrestling fans outside of the stuff I do. So I don't know how familiar they were with the process of it and how everything that goes into it. So I don't think it was ever them not being as supportive, but they're all for it now. They know this is my passion, and they couldn't be more supportive of me pursuing professional wrestling.
Well, that's dope to hear.
Mhm.
I'm just nosy now. Did you finish school too while you were training?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
Yeah, I got a bachelor's at Texas A&M. So that was I started training for wrestling my sophomore year, and then I graduated my senior year. Yeah, obviously I graduated my senior year. I graduated 2 years after that. But I was doing college, and I was trying to get like 3-4 shows a week at that point. Because what's great about Texas is and anyone who's wrestling in Texas kind of knows this, there's many promotions you can work, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, even Monday. If you really wanted to, you can make like a 5-day week out of it. You can do a lot of driving around the state for it, but that's 100% doable. So I remember I'd go to classes, and then I'd do my Thursday shows at Texas Contenders for New Texas. And then, Friday might be something like United in San Antonio. And then usually it was MPX on Saturday, and then it would be Inspire on Sunday. But I was doing that while I was going to school at A&M.
And how you found time to study with all that going on? That's kind of like,
I've always been, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I did. Like, maybe I didn't get. I don't think I got the grades I was supposed to get,
okay.
or probably could get had I put 100% of my time into it. But I knew the degree, and I'm very fortunate to that. Me going to college wasn't the end all be all for me, and it could be something that I was able to pursue as a secondary or backup. I'm very privileged and fortunate for that, but that was kind of always the thing. My parents wanted me to go to college, and that was the main reason I went. I kind of always knew I wanted to do wrestling, and I just needed that, like, push within myself to get in that direction.
Nice. You got a first person got a bachelor's degree on the show. And it kicks ass.
Oh. All right. So we talked about different crowds, different promotions you worked at, different opponents. Is there anything in the future tag team wise?
I'd love to tag with Danny Orion. I think that would be good. He got some gear made recently that is eerily similar to a set I've had for like 2 years. So I think that's something that we could do. In terms of Cleveland, I mean, I'd love to tag with Darian Bainston. He's someone that I think is really cool, and we get along pretty well. I also think Adam Priest would be a fun tag partner, or just someone to work in general. I'd love to work
Okay.
Adam Priest.
Priest is hilarious.
He's the man. He's absolutely the man. Man, I think if I got in a tag team with Tankman, I think we'd win quite a
Oh
bit.
man,
I don't know how much of that would
That's-
be. I don't know how much of that would be me, but I think we get that pretty easily. And then a match that I'd love to do is I'd love to wrestle Derek Dillinger and Katie Arquette with against me and my girlfriend MJ Santana, who's also a wrestler. That
okay.
I think that would be, we're all at AIW, so I think that should be something that
That can
we get
happen.
taken care of. I'd also be down to do Jocelyn Navarro and Isaiah Broner. That'd be
Nice.
sick.
That's
Um,
all for
yeah,
a guest on the show.
yeah, there you go. But yeah, in terms of tag, that's what I'd like to do. And then in terms of opponents, I mean, honestly, I'd love to work all those people one on one. Again, I've worked Darian before, but I'd love to run that back. Cody Lane, someone I'd like to work. Love Cody Lane. And then, yeah, I think outside of that, I mean, I'm open for anything. Oh, Titus Alexander and Starboy Charlie would be fun as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Man. But Isaiah, man, that might be tough though, man. Cause I watched him.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I mean, I don't know if y'all are familiar, but I mean, I've wrestled with big dudes like that constantly. So I'm welcome to it. I'm open to it, especially if yeah.
All right, so we talked about people you want to face. Are there people you face that you feel like really elevated your game or took it to a new level, or even just you felt like you had a great match with them?
Yeah, I got a lot of props for my match with Brian Keith right before he went to AEW, and that was one I wanted to do because I know like the country figured out how good Brian Keith was, but like Texas has known how good Brian Keith is for like much longer. He's the man in Texas. He's the man anywhere, honestly. But he definitely I felt elevated my match with him. I think anytime Danny, Ryan, and I wrestle, even if it's at like West Coast in a four-way, I think I get better. I think that I don't just want to keep shouting out Texas people, but I've unfortunately only been in like scrambles for the most part in in that like AIW and Naptown, but I'd love to. I'm trying to think. Thought Eric Dillinger recently for Unsanctioned Pro. That one felt really good. And then honestly, just being around, but up here, being around people like Derek Dillinger and being around people like Dom, like that, I feel like that's elevated my game as well.
Yeah, Derek is real good, man. I watched his progression over the years. Good person. Good person.
Absolutely.
And so you got like a couple of shows coming up this weekend, correct?
Yeah, so this weekend I've got Inspire Victorious in Texas, and then I feel bad because I'm not gonna remember these. And then I believe I have Neo Pro the 14th,
Okay.
and then I have Unsanctioned Pro the 15th. And then I think I'm in Atlanta and Tennessee the 21st to the 20th. I'm so bad. I need to make sure I need to look at my calendar more. But I think I'm in Atlanta the weekend of the 21st for Action Wrestling and TWE. And then I'll also be in Vegas for Mania week as well. Oh, and then I'm so sorry, I have AIW the 28th of March as well. So I've got that. And then I do want to shout out MJ Santana is going to be at Naptown March 9th. I think that's the show.
Oh, see, look, you're spoiling it, man. They just announced the show like 20 minutes ago.
Shoot. That's not happening.
Can't even
That's
get tickets yet, man. It's cool. It's
no.
cool.
All right, cool. Well, MJ Santana and I will most likely be there. MJ Santana is going to be there, and I don't know who she's wrestling, so never mind. But that's my March.
Oh man, just completely random. Now you mentioned Unsanctioned Pro. You had a no ring match with Anakin Murphy. I want to say how was that, man?
That was awesome. This show, and then I did two other things kind of back to back. And then I remember I wrestled who did I wrestle? I wrestled somebody, and they said, "Oh, I've only seen your death match stuff," and I'm like, I've never done a death match. I got skewered in one match, and then I did like a more or less a dog collar type thing. But I think that for just them being like essentially 3 weeks in a row, kind of gave me that rub. But I don't know. There's something, it's gonna sound like a psycho, but there's something really exhilarating about wrestling either in your own blood or like in something that's more grimy and violent like that. And I give props to like deathmatch wrestlers who could do that week in, week out and do like 4 shows in a row doing that. I can't do that. I don't want to do that, but every now and again I do like to get a little crazy with it or hardcore. So I enjoyed it. I think Anakin's great. Didn't appreciate the firework bat, but other than that, we're all good.
Oh my goodness, man. Man, I'm glad you're so honest about just not wanting to do that.
Look, it's not a thing of I'm not someone to hate on deathmatch wrestling. I think there's a huge art form to it. I think anyone who does that's extremely talented. One of my buddies, Dmitry Alexandrov, I think he won like Deathmatch Wrestler of the Year or for something. And he's phenomenal, but I can't, like bits and pieces is where I draw the line. And I also think like, it's if I'm feeling it. I don't feel like going through glass every week or anything like that.
Like, fuck all that.
Yeah.
Man, and you're right. There's like an art to deathmatch. Just watching guys like set up things. It's like, man, he's really making sure that's at the right angle. It's like
right.
it's something I don't think about as a fan until it's like you talk to wrestlers and it's like, oh, okay, you're real detailed with that, man.
Like it's an art to the shit, man. You like to put like the tube light at a certain angle or like the fucking plexiglass at a certain angle and then bam.
Japanese, like it's its own style now. And so just because it's not something that I can do 100% of the time does not take away any of its like value, especially to like the entire sport of pro wrestling.
Yeah. I think it's something we say all the time. There's so many different types of wrestling. There's something for everybody out there.
Like you can find like something in wrestling for anybody, like you said.
All right, you got any more questions for Dom?
I think that was it. You just wrap it up.
All right. Well, we definitely want to thank you for hopping in with us, joining, giving us your background, letting us know where you've been, where you're headed off to. Do you want to tell the people the best ways to find you online?
You actually have in the future, you can either follow my YouTube channel, that's Shimbashi, or you can just search it up in the YouTube thing. You'll probably have to search up Shimbashi Wrestling because there's a city in Japan called Shimbashi that I don't think I'll ever beat the Google search to, but that's fine. So I think those are the best places to reach me. But if you want to see what I'm most currently up to, Shimbashi Pro on Instagram is going to be the best way.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us. Hope to have you back in the future. I guess I'll see you March 9th.
And I see you at the AEW show. So there we go, full circle. We both see you at different places.
Well, let me say something to everybody in professional wrestling right now. I have established myself as the original gangster, not the original prankster. I don't rap about it. I don't sing about it.